Good evening, Melissa, Mike Galuski. Are you guys there?
Yes, can you hear me?
I can hear you perfectly.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can hear you as good as well.
Hi, guys.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Gina as well?
Hey, hey.
We see you, Mike. I got here early because I was going to do it in my office and I see that court ended, so we'll just use this. It'll be easier. Whoa. Jim Martin texted that he's on his way, so I guess he prefers to do it in here as well. But Mike Aragos is going to come in through the panelist. So I still have a few minutes before we begin, but I wanted to start out a little early. I gotta turn this off.
Hi, Chris.
Hey, Earl, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Regina.
Gina's here. We happened to stop by here and we see that court ended early, so we just decided to get on the town system here. Looks like Aragosa and Godlewski, along with Melissa Cherubino, are on as panelists. I don't know if you can see that, Earl, but they're on. Jim decided to join us after I sent my text, so we'll see. Should be here momentarily. There are three attendees right now coming into the meeting. We haven't started yet. It is 7:01, but we'll be starting very shortly. We're just waiting on Jim Martin to show up. It'll be momentarily. Huh. Oh, I see Earl's on. Mike, as far as video. If Jim's not here in just a few minutes, we'll just start and he can catch up as we get in to it. We only have one item on the agenda and then executive session. So we'll give him just another minute or two. While we're waiting, I want to thank all of you for being flexible and attending the special meeting. It wasn't a meeting that was planned or on the calendar, but we do have to take up this item in relation to the calendar, what's left with August meetings. So it was helpful to have this meeting. I want to thank you for your flexibility. I got 7:03, so Jim's just running a little bit behind. We'll get started and then he can catch up as we come in. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. This is the August 5th meeting of the Glenville Town Board. It's a special meeting. And again, thank you for taking time to be here tonight. We don't have a lot on the agenda. And because it's a special meeting, we do not have privilege of the floor. We do not have council reports or supervisors' comments to the board. We're going to get into the resolution, which is a resolution calling for a public hearing for properties located at and around 507 Saratoga Road. And then we'll get into a resolution to go into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. So with that, I'm going to ask you to join me. I won't know, there will be no invocation tonight, but I'll ask you to join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Our clerk is not with us today, so I'm going to take the roll call, and I will start with, I'll start with myself. Let the record show that I, Supervisor Ketzley, is here. Gina Wierzbowski.
Here.
Michael Aragosa.
Here.
Michael Godlewski.
Here.
Jim Martin, let the record show, is not in attendance at this time, but is on his way. So he'll be marked absent for now. And so we'll go into the resolution. The resolution here tonight, and there's Jim. Thanks, Jim. I'm going to mark Jim here. Last minute change on you, Jim. Sorry, I know.
Okay.
We're just getting to the resolution. I'm going to ask for a motion on the resolution to schedule a public hearing for Wednesday, August 19th to set a public hearing related to a proposed zoning map amendment at the property located at and around 507 Saratoga Road. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
A second.
Moved and seconded. Just before we get into discussion, I have a handout here. I'm going to share my screen. It's a picture of the, I'm going to share my screen. It's the picture of the properties. Do you see that? Do you guys see the screen with the properties?
Yes.
I see the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, I have to move. Okay. So as you can see the screen, that is currently professional residential. The 3 check marks, that's my attempt to make a check mark with a stylus. 507 is the first one on the south. Then the next 2, one is a single family lot north of that. And then further north, that's Marcella's. That's another restaurant. The 507 lot, which is the southerlymost lot, is known as to everybody as the Bayou, the old Bayou, and it's been vacant. As you can see, up to the north part of Route 50, that pinkish you start to see come into the picture on the north end is a general business designation, and everything else around it is single family neighborhood, as you know, Harmon and Frederick and Sandalwood and all of those. So I don't know, Jim, if you were prepared to talk a little bit about this, or if you want me to just go into it, it's up to you.
In terms of the rezoning itself?
Yeah, what we're doing, what we're trying to accomplish here, and
Oh, yeah, I mean, I am to a degree. As I understand it, the restaurant had a pre-existing right. In other words, it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. In zoning terminology, it predated the adoption of the code, and therefore that use can continue. It cannot expand, but it can continue. But as with most codes, our zoning code puts a sunset on that pre-existing use when it ceases to be active. So in other words, the restaurant goes out of business. It has a period of time to reestablish the non-conforming use, meaning the restaurant. If it does not, it reverts back to the zoning as per the zoning code. And that's the case that happened here, as I understand it. The restaurant was in operation, as we all know, for years and years and years. It did go out of active operation, and that did last. I think our period of time in our code, Chris, is a year. Yep. So it lapsed, and the reverter clause, if you will, kicked in, and this now is the underlying zoning, which is a residential zone. So the remedy to this, and I can see what's being done now that Chris has showed us the map, is either you can apply for a use variance, which is a challenging endeavor, to reestablish a restaurant use, because I understand there is interest from a party to do that. Or you can undertake a rezoning, and that is a legislative act. It's a change in the map. We're not changing any of the district language or anything. We're using an existing district that is available to us, but we're changing the map, and that's a legislative action. It's a change to the local law by virtue of that map change. And as we all know, only us as the town board, as the legislative body for the town, can make that change. And in order to do that change, the procedural step that's got to be taken is we definitely have to do a public hearing. So that's why we're taking this action tonight. But you know, I think the wider community has always enjoyed, you know, our family restaurants that we have available to us. There's been a request for more. I remember the business survey that was done prior to Applebee's coming. And I think if we have the opportunity to reestablish that restaurant use, I think, you know, that would be a good thing, certainly for our local economy, but also for our residents who have shown a continuing interest and enjoyment in having local dining options, you know, for their families. So I think that's why we're doing this in the manner we are. We're being so responsive, and I personally think that's a good thing. But we need to take proper procedural steps, and that's what we're doing.
And so just to clarify, we would be changing the zone from a professional residential district, which includes things like single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, and then a whole bunch of professional offices that can be done in that district. We would be then changing it to, after this public hearing, community business district, which allows all of that, but also allows retail not to exceed 20,000 square feet, private clubs, daycare centers, and would also add restaurants with a conditional use permit and other eating establishments. So excluding fast food, by the way. So it's only intensifying it to the next level up, not to general business, but general business is within the vicinity. If you saw that pink up there, and I could put that map back up.
Well, the other thing I think that's positive about this, given what I've seen in the map change, is that we're legitimizing another long-standing, enjoyable restaurant is Marcella's.
Yes.
And so that I think that is a useful thing that's being done here. We're making that zoning for them work well, given the use that's there.
So our original request to the planning department and the planning board was to look at 507, which is known as the Bayou only. The recommendation that came back, sorry, can you guys still hear me? Can you hear me?
Yep.
I can
All right.
I hear you.
Yeah, we lost visual for some. They came back recommending that we would add the two other properties to the north, one including the single family home neighborhood and one which is Marcella's, so that Marcella's would then be in this and they wouldn't have any issues in the future either. So this again is just setting the public hearing. I think Jim gave a good overview. Any questions or comments or discussion?
So is there actually a home between the two? Or
There
is
is a
that
home
just
between-
there is a home between the two? And
Yes.
does somebody reside there, or or is it a home that's available for sale that no one lives in?
Currently, I believe it is occupied, so it's not vacant.
It's not vacant. Okay.
Can I,
Have we notified those homeowners pursuant to this? I mean, will they get a letter specific to this change?
Melissa, you said you wanted to pop in. Can you handle that question and then whatever you wanted to add?
yeah, two items: that the change in zoning still allows single family homes is one of the uses. And secondly, that they will be getting a mailing as well as surrounding neighbors.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
they're gonna get a more more uses for their property than they have currently.
Great.
Any other questions or
So was this process initiated by an application that came into town hall, or how did we? I guess I'm just curious as to how we ended up here at a special meeting over this.
Well, we were always watching this property, obviously. It was a property that was high on our list, Jim and I know Jim is our economic development chair. We need to get this thing redeveloped, and we really want to get it redeveloped. We're always very aware of the 1 year the clock was ticking. There isn't an application currently before the board, but there are discussions with potential applicants, but nobody's going to buy the property the way it's zoned now because they couldn't do what they needed to do with it. So the town has taken a proactive approach to getting this rezoned because there are people that are interested, but certainly couldn't close on the property until this was done.
Do we believe in good faith that this is going to facilitate that process?
You know, I don't think it's going to hurt the process. I think it is certainly going to help the process. And that's why I think we're at a special meeting. But even if not, this is something that we should be doing anyway. And if we wait till August to do it and then call it in September, now we're 30, 60 days down the road until we actually do something. I'd rather be more proactive. But I do believe that the town doing this is going to signal potential buyers that we're serious about this and that we're willing to work with them and help them in their process.
The other thing I would add is one of the tenets of economic development is, you need to have predictability and reliability in your process. And we're building that into this process for any kind of active reuse of that property. As it stands right now with the current zoning in place, and a use variance being really the only available relief other than this rezoning action, you're introducing a very unreliable, unpredictable process into that situation for any new owner to take on. And that's really going to deter any kind of, investment in that property.
Well, and the other thing to point out is this property was zoned professional residential currently, and in the over 1 year time span that it's been vacant, there hasn't been anybody who's wanted to go in and find a use that conforms to the current zoning either.
That's correct.
So that tells me that there's a problem with the zoning in the first place, because
It's a very unique property
it's a unique property, and nobody's tried to do anything with it as it's currently zoned. So.
I understand that, and I agree with that to a certain degree. I just don't want to get into a process where we're kind of doing things based on who the person is or who a proposed buyer is or that sort of thing. It just I guess it just struck me as a little bit odd to do this through a special meeting. I want to see the property sold. I want to see the property, in use, along with a number of properties up that corridor. But it just, I think you understand what I'm saying. And I also think we start to, maybe start to get into questions of spot zoning as well. And I want to avoid that as well. So, but if we have a proposed buyer and things are looking positive, I would agree that this is absolutely a good thing.
Mike, this is Earl. We definitely looked at those issues, the two that you raised, spot zoning, and we also looked at the issue of precedent setting and whether or not we are going against precedent or whether or not we are setting precedent. And we looked at it as in this was the best case scenario for this potential buyer to proceed on something that is, I've known the Bayou for a long time. And so we thought that this was the best way to proceed. We did look at it. I know myself and Courtney and Melissa looked at it in terms of the precedent setting and with other things that we have going on in the town. And we felt that we were okay in that regard, given the fact that the Bayou has been longstanding.
Okay.
And I just want to deal with that directly and put all this on the record. in my opinion, this is not spot zoning. We are not zoning one parcel to the favor of one individual or one property owner. That is spot zoning by definition, and we are not doing that. I just feel, this is the right thing to do for the wider town. And on that basis, that's why we need to go forward with this.
Well, it's not spot zoning because it's allowed in our code. This particular legislative action is allowed for us to take this action. So, just to address the calendar for a moment, because I understand what you're saying, but, we're so, because of the summer hours, it's not unusual during the summers. Most summers, we end up having special meetings because we will not have a meeting until August 19th, which puts us into September for the public hearing, and then potential action could be later. It just puts it off so much further down the road. We have another item on the agenda that we wanted to talk about, so it made sense to get this moving since the public hearing process the clock starts ticking then. And that allows us on the 19th to actually get it done and move forward. That's all. But I mean, not to mislead you, we have had discussions with folks, and it's become clear to us that folks need to have that predictability Jim just talked about, that it is a glaring problem and hurdle for people before they try to put an offer in, because they can't close under the current zoning.
And then the other statement I want to make sure that's on the record is that, at least for me anyhow, these things are always looked on their individual merits and their individual circumstances. There are no preconceived notions here. There are no, general ways of doing things. And this is always looked on an individual basis on the merits of the individual case. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances with this particular case that warrants this form of action. And again, that's why I support it.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It just seems to have come on rather quick for a property that has sat for a period of time. I appreciate Earl's kind of weighing in with his legal opinion on it. That the spot zoning issue was a concern to me, but I understand kind of the greater good and what Councilman Martin was saying in that regard. And obviously, just like the rest of you guys, I want to see, I want to see that business district flourishing. So if we're okay on the legal side of things, I'm okay.
Thank you.
I say we let's move the question and go forward with it. We can always talk about it more during the public hearing.
So there are no other questions or comments on this?
Not for me.
Seeing none, I will record the vote in Linda's absence. And I'm just going to start in the list I have here, not how you're usually seated. Councilwoman Rosbowski?
Yes.
Councilwoman Aragosa?
Yes, I'm a councilman, by the way.
See? Councilman Galewski?
You're a better supervisor than a town clerk. Yes.
Councilman Martin?
Yes.
My second career. And I, Supervisor Ketzley, vote yes. Resolution passes. Next resolution, although before we get to it, I just out of courtesy, we have 10 people on this line. 10 residents have taken the time to watch this single resolution go through, and we do not have privilege of the floor. But if the board would indulge, I think it's just courteous to ask these 10 folks who've taken time out of their day, if they're here for a particular reason or would like to make a comment or ask a question of the board, we would like to open that up now. You can raise your hand, your virtual hand. You see a hand there that you can raise. You can write a question and I can read it. And we can unmute you if you have any questions, comments, concerns. If there's something that brought you to this meeting tonight, we really appreciate you being here. There's 10 of you. If everyone's okay, let me know if there's any questions or comments you guys have. I'll give you a minute to type. You can type in your notes. There's a little pencil there you can hit and type a question, or you can raise a hand and I'll unmute you. Okay, I see a question came in. See, I had a feeling. Oh, it wasn't a question. It was a comment, just listening. Thank you for the opportunity. All right. Oh, another one came in. No questions. Just glad we're taking some proactive action on the Bayou property and neighbors. Thanks. Good. So it looks like really no questions, but 2 good comments. So with that, I am going to move to a resolution going to executive session to discuss a personnel matter with the board. That means I have to clear out the attendees right after we go to that. That's an executive session, is a private session of the board members. We will not have any business afterwards, so there's be no public business after this. It's the last item on the agenda. So I will take up a resolution to go to that. Once we go to executive session, I'll ask you folks to really just get off the line, but I'll clear it if you don't, and we have no further business after that. So Resolution 5 is authorizing the town board to enter into an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Do I have a motion?
I'll move it.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, so we are in executive session. To the residents, thank you very much. Oh, Ted had a question. Ted, I'll get to your question. It's gone now. Okay, thank you, guys. Just got a couple of folks I'm going to wait to get off the line here. 2 more. 1 more. Okay. Staff, I just need Melissa off the line, if that's okay, Melissa. Thank you. So Earl, I have on the call right now, according to my dashboard, 0 attendees. I have myself, you, Mike Aragosa, Mike Godlewski on the call, and then Gina and Jim are in the room. We wanted, if I could just take a second, Earl, to take an opportunity here tonight to update the board on some things that have occurred within the highway department, and Earl's gonna kind of bring us up to date just so everyone's aware of what's going on. Not to get into the details at this juncture, but just to kind of let everyone know what's happening. So Earl, if you're comfortable, floor is yours.
Sure. So the town received an anonymous complaint about Jeffrey McPhail. McPhail is a MEO heavy within the DPW. The town also received a verbal complaint from CSDA highway president and or the leadership of CSDA during a labor management meeting. And as a result of those 2 complaints, well, the one from CSDA leadership was a complaint against Mike Seaburn. And as a result of those complaints, my office has been investigating both the anonymous complaint, which was written, and then the statements made by CSDA leadership. We wanted to update you today because there's a potential for discipline coming down the pipe. The investigation hasn't been completed. Nate Nichols from my office has been with witnesses, and he's meeting with Mike Seaburn and Jeff McPhail tomorrow, along with Vicky. Vicky has been in each interview along with Nate, but we thought it would be prudent to just update the board right now that there is an investigation ongoing, that it may result in discipline, that would come to the town board as to the allegations that are set both in the anonymous complaint and by Bob. I'm not going to go into the facts. I mean, I'll answer as much facts as I know. The one reason that I would not go into the facts is, and I can go into some of the allegations of the complaint, but one reason I don't want to go into that is because you guys might be making some sort of determination and on discipline, and I just don't want there to be any sort of taint towards that if we have to make a determination. But both Chris and I thought it would be prudent to take the time to let everybody know that there is something going on And there's going to be some things that will probably come out as a result of this investigation that need to be cleaned up in DPW.
And if I can just say, Earl, that, you know, Earl and I spoke, we both felt it was better for me to stay out of those interviews because I would be sitting on this board in judgment at the end of the process. So it didn't make sense to be both the fact finder and then the decider along with the rest of the body. So I have not been in the interviews. I don't have firsthand knowledge as to what were in the interviews, what transpired in those as well. Just so you're comfortable to know that I'm not playing both parts.
What was the complaint that came in?
The anonymous complaint was about Jeff McPhail using town resources, like going into the town highway department on off hours and on weekends to do his own personal kind of work on his truck or what have you. The more serious ones are that Jeff held I believe the complaint was a knife, but box cutter, open box cutter to the neck of employee Traficante. And also that there's some inappropriate behavior of slapping butts by Jeff, grabbing genitals, hitting genitals, and some inappropriate allegations of inappropriate talk by Jeff within the department.
How does Mr. Seaburn tie in?
So that's two separate complaints. And
Okay.
so the one complaint regarding Jeff actually came in January. I started looking into it by talking to Dana and by talking to Tom, started gathering some documentation, and then COVID hit and we weren't able to examine witnesses. And then when we basically came back full time, we were at a labor management meeting in June, and I wasn't there at that labor management meeting, unfortunately, but what was said by Bob was that this was about Mike Seaburn, is that essentially Mike is creating the words were used, a hostile work environment. Yelling, screaming. There was an incident that had preceded that labor management that he alleged that Mike had screamed and yelled at him. There's a lot of the word favoritism is being used, but basically creating a hostile work environment for many of the employees, including Bob and the CSA leadership. And so when that came in, we decided to, basically interview the DPW. And about both, it seems to be a culture that we wanted to.
Sorry,
Yep.
Sorry, I just wanted to interject that, degrading comments to employees, that was a big one. Calling folks morons, stupid. These are quotes out of the meeting. Other words I just won't use right now. Those types of things.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Mike?
Yeah. When so your office is conducting an investigation, is it going to result in a written written findings? Any idea when we'll have them by, that sort of thing?
So the investigation usually ends with talking to the two people that are the subjects of that. They were given interrogation notices, they're called, which is essentially that you can have the union present with you because anything you say will be used against you in any sort of disciplinary proceeding. And so those two things are happening tomorrow. After that, Nate has been kind of talking to me as well, telling me what's happening. And I'm, providing the advice of the town attorney as in whether or not, he should continue to look at talk to somebody else. So there might be another set of interviews that happen after they talk to them, because sometimes you talk to the people who are the subject and they say, wait a second, this, and this, and this, and then you got to go back and talk to Bob or somebody like that. So I'm hoping that it'll wrap up within the next week to 2 weeks. I know that Nate is going to provide me with this, with a sort of summary of what is transpired from the witnesses. And then more than likely, he and I will sit down and have a discussion on recommendations on whether or not there should be discipline. And then that recommendations will come to you guys.
What do, with respect to McPhail and Seaburn, do either of them have disciplinary history?
Seaburn, I know, has a counseling in January because I did it. I wrote it, and then it was provided for him. And Jeff, give me a second.
Jeff had one.
Yeah, I think he had one. I just wrote down some of my notes. Yeah, there was one, Mike. I'm not sure, but there's one. No discipline.
Jeff's is related to getting into a verbal altercation with a resident on a paving job on Birch Lane, and I remember it well because that resident was very upset. But those are the only ones. One of the things the board just has to understand is that department heads haven't really done a really good job over the years documenting. That's on the town. That's not on the employees. But those are the two things that are in the files right now.
Is Tom being interviewed as part of the process?
No. Tom has been attempting to be involved as part of the process.
Okay.
And Nate has asked him and Dana to kind of stay out of the process and let the employees talk. There have been some issues that I've had to help Nate with in terms of, here's what you need to say to Tom, here's what you need to say to Dana. Just a thing like Dana popped his head into one of the interviews. They've been asking afterwards some things like, what did you say? And we've had to say, knock it off. This is our investigation. Please knock it off. But no, Tom hasn't been specifically interviewed because I don't think it's come up that he was firsthand knowledge of any of it.
Are you thinking, Mike, that he should be?
Yeah.
Well, I guess he's not included in the executive session. I'm just, if we're boxing the department head out, it will prompt a question as to why.
He knows about the investigation. He did provide me with documentation regarding McPhail. Both he and Dana provided me with time, I forget, they're like time cards, times ins and in outs, things like that. I know that, but I'll talk to Nate about it. I know that he's not being boxed out, but I am, just to be honest with you, Mike, I mean, we've got to be very careful in terms of making sure that the witnesses feel that they can say what they need to say. And sometimes they don't feel that way.
Yeah. I just, if we're disciplining, I mean, if it comes to it and we're taking action against members of the department, I do think we should hear from Tom at some point, whether it's as part of the formal investigation or we hear from him in executive session. I would encourage that. But
isn't the first line of discipline all the department head? Isn't he the first? He or she has to make the first action on any form of discipline, and then it comes to us.
I would have to look at honestly, I'd have to look at what the CDA says in regards to who actually makes the discipline. I think right now, I don't want to, go ahead, Jim, sorry.
I've been a department head in the past, and I've had to take disciplinary action against a union employee in my department. And the first line of discipline rests with the department head, in my experience, and then it goes to the top
Okay,
board.
but the difference here is that these allegations came directly to the town supervisor for a reason, and now it's in my lap, which means it's in your lap.
Oh, no, I'm not.
So
I'm just
I'm just
responding to the point about Tom's involvement.
Right. Well, Tom will be involved at the proper time. Right now, at the proper time. But this is now escalated to, the buck stops here. And this is where it's escalated to. And when I got these complaints, I made it very clear to everyone involved that I am not going to tolerate this type of culture in this town. So now the discipline is with the town board. Because this is where the complaint came. I'm the CEO of the town, and when it comes to that level, then we're gonna take it. We can't kick it back to the department and said, you take care of this type of thing. It's now on our desk.
And we have a zero tolerance policy on some of these allegations. So
Tom can be heard at some point, but Tom is not the subject of the investigation. This has to be very people.
But he's an elected official and he's the head of the department. I do think, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I do think his input should be sought at some point, whether it's part of the formal investigation or just by us to be considered.
And we agree with you, but this is not the juncture.
Yeah, well, let me also say, Mike, I sat down with Tom when we were going to start the investigation. I sat down with him in his office and I said, listen, this is what's going to happen. We need to look into this. He said, yeah, go ahead. And that's what we're doing. And I would imagine that, at some point in time, we'll talk to Tom. But if it hasn't been brought up that, generally what happens is we'll do the investigation based upon firsthand knowledge. You can go into your hearsay if you need to corroborate some stuff. But here, if Tom isn't firsthand, we would rather just do the investigation and then obviously talk to Tom if we say, hey, listen, this was the complaint, this is what was said, and there's corroborating evidence of firsthand knowledge by not only the person, but others. Then we would have to say, this is something that we need to take action on. And that would be a separate thing later on. This is, like I think you've said, and like Jim and Chris have said, this is more or less just kind of telling everybody, here's what's going on. And then after it's finished, then will come some of the meatier questions of, well, what do we do about it? And what does Tom think about it?
Let me ask you this, Earl.
Sure.
Will we get a detailed report of your investigation ahead of the next time we talk about this? Because that's important to me.
I would appreciate that too.
Yeah, I mean, Mike is very good. He's a lawyer. I need to have some time to read what's going on, and I'd appreciate that very much. And I think it's important for Gina and Jim also.
Yeah, Earl,
we all need to have the information.
We'll talk about that, Earl.
Okay.
You are getting the information, Mike. We'll talk about when it's appropriate, Earl, and we'll respond after this evening.
We've just had, I mean, in the past with some of these things, like we're handed the report in executive session, we have limited time to review it, and then we're asked to vote and make pretty serious determinations. So I would agree with Mike's sentiments with respect to that. It'd be nice to have, and I understand the need for confidentiality to whatever extent that you want to put safeguards in. I'm fine with it. Or if you want to just make the report accessible to us to come to town hall to read and leave it there, I'd be all right with that as well.
We'll get back to you on it.
All right, well, wait to hear from
Anything
you.
else, Earl?
No, that's
What was the counseling session in January with regards to Mr. Seaburn? What or counseling memo? What was that in regards to?
he was speeding up the Northway at 100 miles an hour or so.
Yeah, in a town vehicle.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely. We wouldn't have counted him in his own vehicle. We had a town vehicle and town time. We had GPS, and yeah, he was counseled regarding.
Okay.
And I got to tell you that counseling was trying to get that provided was took a little tough. It was a little tough with Tom having Tom do it. And I can't even remember if Tom didn't do it. I don't think Tom did it though.
Earl, let me correct you on that. Tom did not. I did it because no one else would do it. People have got to understand. You've got to look at what's going on here and just understand and trust the process. I had to give that counseling memo because nobody else would.
One
Okay.
of the things that I've said right from the get-go when I came in, and I think we had this discussion last time on an executive session, which is we got to document stuff. I mean, because if it's not documented, then people say it didn't happen. And, you know, so right from the get-go, when this came down, we were like, it's got to be documented. And Chris is right. You refresh my memory, which is that we had a really tough time getting Tom to do it, and Chris ended up having to do it.
So how did that go, Chris?
Didn't go well.
Okay.
He
Was, I
wasn't.
mean, was he
he didn't-
receptive to it? Like,
He was noticeably upset, very, I'm going to use this word because I don't know what else word to use, pouty, contrite, didn't really understand it. You know, his excuse was, I just didn't realize it. It like kind of was no big deal. And I think he knew the fact that I was doing it, there wasn't a lot of support for it by his own direct supervisor, which kind of undermined the whole thing. And it looked like it was, I'll be honest with you, it looked like to him, I'm sure, that it was a personal agenda of mine, even though it wasn't. It was brought to me. I didn't look at the GPS. I didn't pick that up. I didn't know about it. It was brought to me because the immediate supervisor ignored it. And we're the ones that pushed for the counseling memo because we're not going to have people driving 100 miles an hour in town cars and not do anything about it. So it was uncomfortable, but he accepted it. I made him sign it, and it was put in his file, and it was the first thing I ever put in his file.
okay.
And just so you're aware, it was 96 miles an hour with an average of 83 going up the Northway in a town vehicle.
Gotcha.
So
Anything
we
else?
will keep, go ahead.
No, that's it. That's all the questions I had.
We will keep everyone up to date. It was important for Earl and I to do this even in the preliminary stage before we had anything, any findings to share, because we didn't want the board to be blindsided. You will get the information. I'm sure Tom will have his opportunity to speak. It's important right now, I think, that it's not at this juncture for a variety of reasons. And just stay tuned. We're going to keep you all up to date on this thing. We're not hiding anything.
Okay.
Yeah, one of the things about, I just want to make sure, one of the things about, about reports is that there's always an issue of whether or not it's foilable. And so that's the one thing I just got to make sure that we got to protect personal privacy of our employees, make sure that they're able to complain and make sure that things that they say are fine. We can all remember some of the Schenectady stuff that happened over the past 10 years. So that's one of the things I just got to make sure that I talk to Chris about and, make sure that we do it right.
No, I agree. Like I said, I'm open to whatever process if I have to come to your office and sit down with you and, I think what, I know I'll just speak for myself. What's been difficult in the past with some of these issues, and we haven't had ones, maybe with the exception of the police officer that got caught in Troy or Mechanicville, wherever it was, where it was kind of a tough call what action to take. They've all been relatively straightforward. But in the past, the process has been we come to a meeting, there's executive session on the agenda, we go in, we'd be handed a 5 to 10 page report and be asked to read, digest, and decide all in one sitting. And it would just be nice to have the ability to review the contents sooner and think a little bit about what we wanted to do.
Yeah,
Mike,
I got to think that. Go ahead, Chris.
I just want to say, I don't recall that. I recall what you're saying is being accurate. We've been in executive sessions to update the board, but I don't recall handing out large reports asking you to read them and vote on them immediately. I don't think that's ever happened. And the two board members here don't recall that either.
Jim wasn't on the board, John was, and it was with Mike handing out determination and fine. It was when we terminated the guy in the highway department. But it wasn't a it wasn't a hard call to make.
Yeah, that was an easy one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so other than that, I don't recall anything else. I mean, maybe Mike handed a handout out, but we've generally done a good job keeping the board up to date on these things in executive session and not blindsiding anyone on it.
Okay.
So other than that, I think we've gone through, exhausted this. We will be back. We'll have a work session on the 12th. The work session will be at the senior center. And then we'll have our board meeting on the 19th. So that will be August. And then we'll have our work session, just so everyone's aware, on the 9th. I sent you earlier at the senior center, as well as we continue to try to accommodate the court and catching up on their calendar, as they use this room on Wednesdays now for our work sessions. So anything else? I'm going to say we're out of session at 7:47.
Just as a quick aside, Chris, you guys got to vote to come out of executive session, and then you're gonna have to vote to end the meeting. So
Right.
you just need somebody to go ahead.
I got a motion from Jim, second by Gina. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? We're out of executive session at 7:48. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your evening.
Bye, guys.